Hello and welcome back to the Parlay Show. Rob Conway here. It's time for a little French Open talk. We got one of the second Grand Slam of the year coming up in Paris in next week. Qualies are already underway, and to help us break it down, Albert Vartanian, by the way, over here, and Crina Mustafa. How are you?
Cree.
I'm good. I'm excited for some big tennis around the corner.
We just got some breaking news about Felix Auger-Aliassime. We'll get into that in a minute. I just wanted to get off the top. Look, Rafael Nadal is not here. He is the king of clay. We technically have a prince of clay in Carlos Alcaraz, but it's going to be one of the more interesting French Opens on the men's side for the first time in a very long time because Nadal's not there. Everyone wants to see him there. It's what he does best. But what are you looking most forward to on the men's side coming in?
Yeah, well, firstly, it's just very weird to be at Roland Garros without Rafa.
No Rafa.
Just thinking about how much has changed in 1 year, because Rafa won the French Open last year. Like he started the year off winning the Australian Open, French Open, and then injuries just got in the way. So like, firstly, that's just going to be weird. But I think honestly, like, everybody's looking at Carlos and Novak, but I think there are a couple of like guys that I think the field is a little bit more wide open. Like if you look at the top favorites on Bet99, like you have Carlos, Novak, then you have Holger Rune, Stefanos Tsitsipas, and Daniil Medvedev. Medvedev and Holger Rune just played each other in the Italian Open final, which Medvedev ended up winning. I think that's great for them and their momentum heading into the French Open, and I think they could be very scary because I think Medvedev and Rune are in the bottom half of the draw, so they're not on the side with like Novak and Carlos.
Right.
We
Holger
could
Rune
see them make the final.
He needs to get different color clothing though when he plays on the clay court because he basically is invisible.
What a great name though, Holger Rune. So I mean, what's so interesting to me is when Nadal's at this tournament, he's the player that you want to avoid always. You don't want to touch him on clay.
Yeah.
Who's that guy now? Is it Carlos?
It's either Carlos or Novak, just because like Novak Djokovic, he's been successful on clay. He's won the French Open before. But he's also a guy that you don't want to run into because he knows how to win. Like he will do whatever it takes to win, whether it's questionable sometimes. Like if they like, I know like him and like Holger Rune, they like to pull that like fake medical timeout when they start to go down. That's
Gamesmanship, right?
One of my biggest pet peeves of tennis. But like those are kind of some of the reasons why you don't want to run into a guy like that. I really hope we do see like a Carlos and Novak semifinal because I think whoever comes out of that one will probably win the French Open if I had to.
Yeah, Carlos right now favorite plus 144 and the Joker plus 215. All right, two big favorites in this thing, expected to go all the way. Do you see anything past those guys to win it?
I mean, like I said, I think Daniil Medvedev honestly is a very good pick. He's kind of had the enemies to lovers story trope with clay because he actually used to really hate playing on clay. Like, and he made it very clear he loves the faster hard courts because clay slows down your game a lot. Yeah. But he just won the Italian Open. That was literally his first time winning matches in Rome. Like he had never won a match in Italy before, and the first time he did, he goes all the way and wins the entire thing. So I think he's probably having a different mindset now. So like he could be dangerous.
Why is that he doesn't like it? I know there's the footwork side of it, you know, it's sliding around, but for a guy who sits on the baseline and just waits for you to make a mistake, you'd think it'd be easier for him.
Well, the thing is with clay is the ball bounces differently, and like for baseline players, it is a little bit hard sometimes because you need a bit more movement on clay. You can slide on it. There's a lot more drop shots, and I think that's probably the part where like Daniil Medvedev would probably rather not, because he does like to just literally, like you said, like sit at the baseline and just hammer it home every time, and that is much more friendly towards a hard court than a clay court. But I think he's figured it out, and I'm excited.
Heading into majors, what do you look at? Do you look for players who are in form, maybe like a Medvedev? Do you look at major history with that player? Which one do you weigh more when trying to pick a champion?
I think in the past, I like to look at history, especially when you have your Rafas, your Novaks, your Roger Federers, and stuff like that.
But I almost feel like those guys are kind of on an island of their own, right?
Yeah, that's true. So that's why now I always like to look at who's the most informed, because that, to me, the tournaments leading up to each Grand Slam is what is important to me, because it tells you what frame of a player is currently in, like what form they're in, how they're playing against different opponents, how they've adapted to the surface change, because that's one of the things that goes kind of underrated in the tennis calendar, how quickly you have to adapt to changing surfaces all the time, because you go from hard court to clay to grass and then back to hard court again, and that's like honestly very hard to do. A lot of players have talked about that, so I think whoever does that leading up to the tournament is going to be more successful, and that's who I like to look at.
Interesting.
On the women's side, obviously we have a decent favorite in Iga Świątek at minus 150 right now at Bet99. But I always find that, I mean, look, it's part of it's because for the longest time we lived in the Big Three era, and it was just one of those three guys always won, literally always won. But on the women's side, there is a lot of times you see somebody 15, 20, 25 in the world come up and win a Grand Slam. We saw a little bit of issues for Świątek in Australia. She's not, the most dominant completely, with Sabalenka there and others, but she is the favorite. But when you look down this list, is there anyone else that you kind of like? Ostapenko's been playing quite well. Ons Jabeur, of course, is always in there. Coco Gauff, but these are at plus 17, plus 21, plus 23. These are big odds. What are you looking at?
This has been the year of Aryna Sabalenka and Elena Rybakina. Like, these two, to me, have been the best story to come out of the year. Obviously, like, Iga has been dominating until now, and I still think she very much deserves to be the favorite.
Yeah, for sure.
This is her tournament. She plays very well. I think the conditions are going to favor her as well. She's a defending champion, but man, like the way Sabalenka and Rybakina have formed a rivalry this year, even between Sabalenka and Świątek as well, who have like gone back and forth in several finals to go throughout the year. I think those three, like Iga, Sabalenka, and Rybakina, I think it's going to be those three. I just find it very hard to pick somebody else just based on like who's in top form right now. Coco Gauff has been struggling a little bit. Ons Jabeur has struggled with some injuries this year, so she's not really like in the form that she was. Otherwise, I would place her as a favorite because she has a very unique slice that's hard to play against, especially on clay. But even like, yeah, you definitely don't want to run into Helena Ostapenko. I don't think Ostapenko's going to go all the way, but like she's just a very interesting character. I don't know how much you know about her, but she's got an interesting personality, and she can
seems
play
like a gamer too.
She can play. She's won the French Open.
Yeah. One
time where she beat Simona Halep, and that was like the worst match of my life. But yeah, I know. I think it has to be those top three. I know Świątek, like she could match up with Barbara Krejcikova at some point. So Krejcikova's not going to be able to make the final either unless she beats Świątek, then she could. But I don't know. I just find it very hard to go outside those top three.
Any of those big names, that we kind of know, Pegula, who's got some big odds, Kvitova, Madison Keys, not informed, but are any of them, Azarenka, are any of them able to kind of, you think, have an opportunity to make a deep run here?
Well, listen, a lot of those names you mentioned have very tough first-round matchups.
Really?
Like, if you look at Victoria Azarenka, she's going to play against Bianca Andreescu. I think that's harder for Bianca just based on, like, the amount of time being able to play so far. If you look at, like, Layla as well, like, on the Canadian side, like, she's going up against Lynette, who's been absolutely amazing in the last year or so. Danielle Collins and Jessica Pegula are facing off against each other. That's an all-American matchup.
That's a big one, too, yeah.
That is a big
These
one.
are, like, quarterfinal matchups. Really.
It's insane.
Yeah.
It's always so crazy because, like, you have, like, certain parts of the draw where you're like, okay, this feels normal. Like, you have top players going against a qualifier. And then you just have this, like, random, like, these top players who I guess it's because of seeding that if they've fallen out of the top, like, 50, that it just ends up being weird. But, it just makes for some good round one matchups. So I think there could be some upsets there.
So I just can't believe how big of a favorite Świątek is at minus 150, which has changed right now. It's minus 152. But come the final, like, what's that number going to be?
Well, here's the thing,
because that number gonna get to?
The thing with Iga Świątek is, like, you don't want her to get to the final because if she gets to the final, she is the ultimate favorite.
Right.
Like, I think, like, she just turns on a different kind of tennis. She can play not her best until she gets to the final, but when she gets to the final, she just turns into another gear. So, like, if I were to bet on, like, somebody else to make it, like, all the way, they'd have to get past Iga. Like, Iga would have to be eliminated before they get to go all the way.
She's 18-1 over her past 3 French Opens.
Yeah.
Domination, dude.
Yeah.
And she's so young.
The number makes sense, but it's such a big number.
She's so young.
Yeah.
I remember because Roger Federer was my favorite player, and I remember when Robin Soderling beat Rafael Nadal in order for him to play him in the final and got his all 4 Grand Slams. Otherwise, I don't know if Fed would have ever found a way to win the French Open. What an amazing run for Rafael Nadal. You're talking about Roger Federer, one of the, if not the greatest, but one of the greatest for sure tennis players, and probably never would have won the French Open during that era just because there's a guy named Rafael Nadal. Canadians, we talked about Felix Auger-Aliassime off the top, and he withdrew from Lyon. Your thoughts on that? Any information on that? What that means? I mean, he's a decent, what I think, plus 80 or 7,900 or something to win. It's not like he's probably going to win the French Open, but is this a bad sign? Is he playing next week?
He's taking a tournament off for the French Open.
Listen, it's been really hard for the Canadians this year. Like, both Felix and Chapo have struggled with injuries. They've both been struggling with knee injuries. Now, Felix did list it as like a right shoulder injury for pulling out of Lyon. I'm not sure if that's like a real injury or if it's just like, I want to get some rest because he made like the semifinals or the quarter of the semifinals. I'm not sure if it was like, I want to take some more rest. I'm just going to list this injury and just get some time before the French Open starts next week. I'm not sure. But what I think and what my gut feeling is that none of them are going to be at their highest level. If you think to the French Open last year, Felix pushed Rafa to 5 sets in the 4th round. And I think that was like, I don't want to say his limit of his level, but like, I don't know if he can raise it from that this year or if he can even get there, which is unfortunate because like injuries do play a part of that. He hasn't really looked like himself. I need some of that confidence to come back. So I'm hoping it does, but we'll see. This
was supposed to be the golden era of tennis in Canada, and it is, regardless of how many majors anyone wins or Grand Slams anyone wins. But it was surprising to me when I looked at the numbers to see Shapovalov at plus 14,900 and Felix to be basically plus 8,000 and Bianca to be where she is. She obviously won a Grand Slam in the U.S. Open. But what is it? I mean, you kind of brought up, but what is it about Canada tennis right now? I mean, you can't blame Milo. She was up against like the greatest era of men's tennis ever. But this was supposed to be a group
he made his return too at some like small tournament. Yeah, I saw he's like playing at some small tournament.
I wouldn't mind seeing him make a deep run out of Wimbledon or something. But you're supposed to see like Felix and Shapovalov, like for them to be kind of, and it looks like guys are passing them. Guys like Holger Rune, like younger players, Yannick Sinner, they've all kind of passed them. Like I'm not trying to say their careers are over in any way, shape, or form, but what do they need to do to get back into that top 10 in the world?
So you look at the score. You have Felix, Chapo, Leylah, and Bianca.
Right.
All of them kind of went up very quickly. Bianca wins a Grand Slam. Leylah makes the final of the U.S. Open. Yeah. Both Felix and Chapo start to make it consistently really deep at Grand Slams and other tournaments. They win like team events together. And all of a sudden, it starts to drop off a little bit. And I honestly think that's what we need to do with our expectations. We need to temper them a little bit because we can get really wrapped up in the excitement of like all the success happening at the same time. But in tennis, you need to have a short-term memory because what happened one year is not going to happen the next. So I think with them, first of all, they all need to get healthy because all 4 of them have been struggling with injuries. And I'm not trying to say that as an excuse. Every tennis player struggles with injuries, but I think, especially with Chapo, the reason I think his odds are really that much because he was out for like with a knee injury. He like skipped the Italian Open. So I think that like less time on clay is probably factored into why his numbers look like that. But they just need to get healthy, get right, and just practice their own game because each of them specifically have very versatile skill sets that could make them very successful, and we've seen flashes of that. So they just need to get back to that, and then we can build up our expectations again.
Put you on the spot. Who do you got? Both sides.
Whew. Oh man, I'll go Carlos and
Swiatek. The favorite.
It's so tough because like Sabalenka's not in her side of the draw, so like I kind of want to lean Sabalenka, but also like maybe she's tired from winning all these tournaments. I don't know. I'll go Swiatek / Sabalenka.
Okay, no, you can do that. You're allowed to pick two, especially when one of them is at plus money, a deep plus money in Sabalenka. Yeah, you can have a couple of. What about you, Albert?
I'm gonna go Elena.
Okay.
I'm gonna go Elena, and on the other side, I mean, I want to say Carlos as well, but I don't want to. You know me, I don't want to go with the favorite.
Let's thing with Carlos
Holger Rune.
Okay.
Let's go Holger Rune.
The thing with Carlos is like he's kind of figured out a way to win from behind, which makes me feel good about him moving forward as well. Because being able to adapt within a tennis match, even if you're losing, is like something that's very important. Something that Bianca Andreescu is actually very good at. So. I don't know. I think
who knows? Maybe he dominates, wins this thing, makes this tournament his. Nadal comes back next year. That's the final passing of the torch. Storylines. Hashtag that'd be incredible.
Hashtag that.
This guy is wise in sport. That's why he's in sports media. Knows what he's talking about. I have Krejcikova and I have Medvedev.
Okay, I like it.
I'm not gonna go with Alcaraz and Swiatek. Do not listen to me. No. I love my tennis, but to say that I'm in any way, shape, or form an expert would be a complete lie. So thank you very much, Crina Mustafa, for joining us here to talk French Open. We will bring you back next week as the tournament gets underway. Qualies are underway. If anyone's confused at the book right now, like Felix is in Lyon, but he's the French Open. It's just because qualifiers are on right now. the actual tournament. The main draw starts next week, correct?
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you very much, Crina, for joining me. Albert, thank you very much for joining me as well. Rob Conway here. We got lots of action coming up this weekend. Of course, the NHL and NBA conference finals continues and could be over as of tonight. And we have some golf. Charles Schwab.
Schwab, baby.
We got tons of stuff. What else am I missing?
F1, man. Got the F1 going on. You
the
got
French Open.
Final day of the Premier League.
Final day of the Premier League.
Champions League next week. Let's go.
All right, sounds good. Rob Conway, Albert Vartanian, Crina Mustafa, and we will be back here on Tuesday. Enjoy the sports, everybody, this weekend.